than what might be typical. Expectations and value of formality and politeness from other people's cultures. So I know for me, no matter who I'm talking to, whatever email goes out, I write hi, first name. But sometimes people write to me and say, dear Leonie, or dear Ms. Tillman even. And in that case, I tend to just reply in the same tone. So then I will reply back to them, dear Mr. So-and-so. But generally, if I'm just writing for myself, hi, everybody. So softening language. Here are just some words that you can apply in any kind of email writing situation, but be careful where they go, what they mean, and what their purpose is. You need to make a decision about that. So I'll take you through that a little more. And these areas are some very specific ways to soften your language. So the first one, I've got two different colors there because I'm going to come back and apply them to a writing situation. So instead of saying we have a problem with that, how would you insert might and slight? So in this situation, we would say we might have a slight problem with that. I'm being direct with my message, but I'm being a bit softer by just adding these words in there. There'll be a surcharge. There could be a small surcharge. So you can see each time I'm using a modal verb and a qualifier. And you'll see this happens. I do this a lot. I realized when I started writing my messages that my emails later on that I was using these quite consistently. This is still out of our price range. This would still be a little out of our price range. That will be difficult to get approval for. That may be rather difficult to get approval for. So each time you've got a modal verb and a qualifier just to soften the language. So basically we're not saying something direct and absolute. We're saying it's a possibility and we're softening it even further with this qualifier. Another way to do it is one of my favorites. I think this is quite funny about English, but instead of saying this is unhelpful, especially Australians, we love positive language. And if something is absolutely negative, like unhelpful, just the word itself is sometimes too much. So we'll turn it around and say, this is not helpful, but also put that extra adverb in there. So this is not very helpful. So with respect, this is not very helpful is much softer, but I'm still telling you it's unhelpful. I'm still being quite direct with my message, just some of the language is softening up. We're unhappy with this arrangement. To be honest, we're not altogether happy with this arrangement. And one more. You're being inflexible. It's very direct. It's almost offensive to me. I hear some other languages use this kind of language, but I think in English and that Anglo-Saxon culture, we tend to say, I'm sorry, but you're not being sufficiently flexible. So you can see each time we turn that absolute negative into not plus the positive word and insert an adverb. Very useful for softening. Oh, by the way, all these slides you can get access to later, like we did in the first session. I've got them up on the web, so you can download them just in exchange for your email address, and I'll give you the link to those later. Inability and restrictive phrases. So here we're using the word able. So it looks like we can't reach agreement. It looks like we're unable to reach agreement at this stage. Just by adding that at this stage, at the moment, for now, it means it's not permanent. So you start to see this trend of, instead of saying things that are permanent or absolute, we're softening it. So we're saying, for now, it's not ideal, or it's not quite the right thing. Not no, but it's not quite the right thing. Yeah, would softening the language sound a bit less confident? I think it depends. This is where the nuances come in. Sometimes it's necessary. And I think it's an even scale from not to, so we're talking about sensitive information here. If it's not very insensitive, you might just add one softener in. But as things get even more confronting, you might have to add 2, 3, or 4 softening terms to make it palatable, to make it not too offensive. So it is a bit of a sliding scale. And this is where, just being aware of it, you'll start looking around at how people are using it. But don't use it if you're just being direct. If you've got no conflict or it's not sensitive, don't use this stuff. That's when I think you might sound a bit less confident. Unfortunately, we cannot provide that. Unfortunately, we're not able to provide that at this time. So you can see not able to, much less direct than cannot. Sounds very absolute. I'm afraid I can't increase our offer. I'm not authorized to at present. I'm afraid I'm not authorized to increase our offer at present. So you can see that's a nice one. It's a nice one to fall back on sometimes. Now, this is also great because, and the reason I've got these ones in color is that I come back to them, like I said, in another example later. So try and just hold on to these colors, but I'll remind you later. This is just adding the past participle of to be, or the present perfect, or the past perfect. So we could say, we assumed this would be acceptable to you. We could say, we were assuming this would be acceptable to you, or we had been assuming this would be acceptable to you. We wondered how you'd feel about sharing transport costs. We were wondering. I use that a lot in my email when I just have something to soften slightly. I was wondering if, a nice soft entry, if I'm going to ask a favor of somebody. We thought you might be prepared to look at this again. We had thought you might be prepared, or we were thinking you might be prepared. Just, it's sort of making it a bit of an offer. Would you think about it? And of course, the passive voice is something we avoid most of the time. You want to speak most of the time in active voice, but if you want to be a little less direct, you told us you were interested. It's very direct. It sounds almost offensive to me. So we were told you were interested. You can see they've changed it from you to we and put it in a passive voice. You assured us there'd be absolutely no delays. It's a bit that feeling, you know. So you might say, we were assured there'd be no delays. And the last one is other verbs like seem and appear. They're 2 words which soften tone as well. So I'm sorry, but you don't understand. Oh, well, I'm sorry, but it seems you don't understand. Just so much nicer. So what should Kathy do? Go back to the scenario before, and can you even just think how you might apply some of these things? Say Kathy already knows that she hasn't got the promotion. What should she say to her boss, addressing her frustration? So she's already not got the promotion, but she's upset and she's going to work every day and she doesn't know what to do from here, but she wants to progress in her career. So she doesn't want to focus on the frustration. She wants to focus on what's important to her, which is moving forward. So how would she ask her boss for a conversation on addressing this situation? I'm going to give you an idea. Hi, Simon. I'm going to call him Simon. How are you going? I'm going to move this chat out of the way. How are you going? I'm just putting the finishing touches on ABC's board report and should have it to you by the morning. So it's a bit of an update, a bit just nothing to do with the core of what I'm going to talk about, but just it's sort of framing it with a friendly tone, basically. Now, I had been thinking about the recent changes in the office. I completely understand your decision to promote Heidi. She's a great worker and a supportive colleague. I had been thinking about my own career progression and would like to discuss it with you. I was wondering if you had time for a quick coffee catch up tomorrow morning. Let me know what you think. Kind regards, Kathy. So you see, it's very tentative, it's friendly, it's chatty, it's professional, but it's also trying to be quite warm. She wants to have a conversation that's open. It's not offensive. It's not asking why I didn't get the promotion. She's now letting that go. She's now focusing on moving forward, but it's still a difficult conversation. So you can see here, there's the same email. And we've got the qualifiers in here, just and quick. We've got the modal verbs, should have, would like to discuss. And we've got that past continuous and perfect. So here the past perfect, had been thinking, and I was wondering if you had time. And up here, I've been thinking about the recent changes in the office. So just a few little ways of softening your email. But think about that. Sit back and feel, if you receive that email, would you be happy to go for coffee? Does it feel friendly? Does it feel approachable? It doesn't feel threatening anyway. It's probably still going to be a difficult conversation because she's already addressed that she's frustrated. Actually, has she? No, just I've been thinking about the changes. So it's probably what I decided in this email was that I probably would share my thoughts on my frustration, but what it made me really think is that I want to up my game. I want to play a bigger game. I want to speak to you and work with you to try and help my career move forward. So some things are left for the spoken word. Some things can be put in the email. So the subject of the email would be, yeah, I would probably just make it really casual because it's internal. I'd probably say coffee catch up. Or another thing I like to do in emails more and more, maybe not something as soft as this, which is just fairly informal, but to put square brackets around a one word indication of what's required of the email. In this situation, it might be in square brackets, invite. Coffee in the morning, something like that. But that square brackets thing I'm using more and more, and I see it in marketing emails quite a bit. And I think it just gives the reader a really quick indication of what's required in the email and how urgent it is. Don't put urgent necessarily. I mean, I'm sure there are times I have put urgent in there, but try and give an indication in those square brackets of what the email requires of you or requires of the reader. Okay, now being assertive, I'm going to approach it from a different angle now. So that was quite soft and quite friendly and unassuming, I would say. It's also slightly apologetic, which goes back to, I think, Coral's point earlier, is that would you sound like you're lacking a bit of confidence? So it's by no means offensive. When I say assertive, I don't mean offensive. It's just getting straight to the point. Now, in the other seminar, would it sound a bit weak or less confident? Yeah, exactly. You're commenting because you're using a modal verb in your question about less weak and confident. The head-on sentence, however, I addressed this in the previous seminar. And again, it's just something that comes up a lot in business. If you want to be more assertive, this is the structure to use. And it's, like I said, it's something that doesn't come naturally to me. That first email comes naturally to me. It's very conversational, blah, blah, blah. I'd probably write that first. And I think, no, hang on, I want to be a bit more direct. I don't want to look like a pushover. I want to get straight to the point. I want to know that I'm going to sit down and have a very clear conversation about my career moving forwards. So that's why we might use the head-on sentence here, and that's what we're going to do. So start with the most important subject of your sentence. Rather than I was thinking, I was wondering, all those sentences don't get straight to the point. They don't start with the most important subject of the sentence. And add a well-chosen verb and finish with the rest of the sentence, whether it's the object, and it will look like that. Stories influence professionals. Not professionals are often influenced by the stories that they hear. That's a very long-winded way of just saying stories influence professionals. And as a second part to that, you might want to add some extra information in the order of manner, place, and time. This is debated, in fact. Sometimes people say place, manner, time, but definitely time at the end of your sentence. Don't put your time in the middle. So what that might look like is subject, verb, object, manner, place, time. So the second part would be by making the information accessible in technical settings in a short period of time. So we're not necessarily saying at 5 p.m., but just any reference to time. So remember, just quickly, sentences influence professionals by making the information accessible in technical settings in a short period of time. So there you go. You've got a very traditional and direct and assertive type sentence there. But how do we apply this to the situation that we find Kathy in? So just think to yourself now, how would you say a similar thing in a more direct way? How would you get that across? What should Kathy say to her boss to address her frustration and not getting the promotion? And like we did in the first one, I wasn't going to go into all the detail because it is a really sensitive situation. I'm talking about my career here. It's not about a project or a job. It does require back and forth communication. So we'll get to that also later on how a verbal conversation would play out there. But don't always think you can. Actually, a colleague of mine was always saying, I just always write emails because I write so much better than I speak. And while tonight's focus is on writing, I would say you can't live a professional life like that. You're not going to be a leader. You're not going to move through your career in the way you want. You have to pick the times when it's best to go and have a face-to-face conversation. And you have to pick the other times when it's best to confirm a conversation with an email or set up a conversation with an email, or maybe in most situations you are just addressing the problem at hand in the email. But know when it is best to actually pick up the phone or go and have a face-to-face with someone. Maybe a little more difficult, maybe a Zoom to Zoom now. So an assertive email, what might it look like? Hi Simon, how are you going? The ABC board report will be finalised on your desk by morning. The office changes seem to be working well. Heidi deserves the promotion. I'm in early tomorrow. I wondered if you had time for a quick coffee catch up. Ping me in the morning if you're keen. Cheers, Leonie. Oh, Kathy, sorry. I took the reins there. So you can see it's more direct. It's more assertive. It's also more familiar. I feel like my relationship here with Simon is more direct, but it is more friendly. It's more like we trust each other. There's an assumed trust here. I'm not asking for politeness. I'm not asking in an overly polite way when it does sound like I'm begging. So this is Coral's question from earlier. It might sound a little weak, the first one. And this is where so now you've got the two next to each other. You can see the difference, and that will make you better at it will help you make better decisions, because really it's just about making a decision in that moment. But as you go through time, you start to be able to get that feeling of when it requires a more direct approach, and assuming that trust is there, assuming that relationship is good. It also reminds me of Julie Middleton, who's a cultural intelligence trainer, internationally renowned. And she says in her relationships, when she's dealing with anyone else from a different culture, she assumes they're good friends. And I think that works really well in the Anglo-Saxon Australian workplace. Assume a conversation is always a possibility. Assume that they're going to give you their time for a limited amount of time, but the conversation will always be able to be had. So I think don't assume that you can't ask questions. Don't assume that you should move away from and leave them alone because they're very busy. Move into those conversations. Acknowledge that they're very busy. I know you're probably really busy. Do you have 5 minutes for a quick chat? That's the way I would say that I show respect to people, especially people who are higher up than me in the hierarchy. Even there, assume you're important enough to have that conversation. Oh, okay, so Coral says, but this one doesn't sound polite. That's an interesting point. So if that doesn't sound polite to you, it might mean that you are assuming too much familiarity. But to me, this sounds like we're buddies. I would write to my friend like that. So even my boss, I could write to like that if we've known each other for a while. If he stepped over me for a promotion, if he promoted someone above me, I could probably still go to him and have a pretty decent conversation, say, oh, look, I was really disappointed. But I get it. Like, I know it's an interesting position it puts me in, because I've learned that actually I am looking to move up in the company and take on more responsibility. So it leads to a bigger conversation. So I'm just reading the message here. Okay, yeah, we'll answer them in the Q&A. But yeah, if you've got them as you go, no problem. If I miss it, we'll get to it later. Okay. Now, when to speak? No, would an assertive email sound a bit too direct to a boss? I don't think so. It's actually okay. And of course, you have to assess the relationship you have. But I would say, culturally speaking, that if you assume a little more directness and assume that the relationship is very flat and even with the partner of a firm, I would suggest that's going to be a really good way for you to build good relationships. Assume you're good friends. And I know that's a big culture shift. And I see there's a lot of politeness, but I think that is a big shift between a more Anglo-Saxon approach and a more, rather than making a massive generalization, but that saving face element of Asian cultures, I think does you a bit of a disservice in a Western Anglo-Saxon culture like the Australian workplace. If you can, and the best way I can describe it is simply that: assume you're good friends and respect people's time. I think they're the two contrasting ways to really know that you're going to make it in the right tone. So yeah, it's a difficult and challenging area. And like I say, look, you're going to make mistakes, but you'll learn that way. I almost feel like, go ahead, make the mistakes, play around with it, but be open and say, look, if ever I've offended you, please let me know. That might be a good way around it. But just, buy someone a coffee, say, do you have time for a quick chat? I've got something on my mind. I'd love to hear what you think. All those things are completely okay. But when to pick up the phone? Conflict can be unbearable, but it doesn't have to be. So much good can come from conflict if you lean into it and handle it well. That's the challenge though. I mean, I run a whole nother course called Conflict and You, and it's teaching people how to have those conversations. And the first point is being more open. If you can be more open and ready to have that two-way conversation, then that's a great way to start that ball rolling and lean into conflict. Emotions can be helpful. Don't fall into them. Don't allow them to take you over, but you can acknowledge them: frustration, confusion, disappointment. And then you can ask yourself, why? Oh, well, I didn't get the promotion. So is it your pride, or is it actually, I'm not thinking enough about my career moving forward? And I probably need to have conversations with my coaches, with my managers, with other people in the organization, maybe with human resources. I don't know how your company's structured, but it illuminates to Kathy that she wasn't having the right conversations in order to let everyone know she was interested in a promotion, that she was keen to take on more responsibility. So sometimes it might just be as simple as that. And acknowledging the frustration can be your indication, not blaming someone else for looking over you for that promotion. Let that be okay, but don't take it personally, and don't let it take you over. I think that's the biggest lesson anyone can probably learn, is not to take it personally, and don't get lost in your emotions. You've got an emotion, what is it telling you? It's even helpful to identify it with the other person. And I'll show you how I might do that in a moment. Share your emotions in a cool tone and talk about, why do I have that emotion? Quickly get to asking a question of the other person to hear what they think and how they might be able to help you solve it. So I might identify my feeling. I was really disappointed that I didn't get the promotion, but what it showed me was that I'm keen to have more of a conversation about what else I can do. Do you have any ideas? Very quickly get to a point of asking the other person. And ask if you can stay in contact. about this issue to make sure that you move forward in the best way. Maybe if we check in every fortnight so we can just have a quick chat, even if it's a 5-minute coffee, just so I can keep on track with the objectives I'm setting myself. Man, if I had an employee who came to me with that, showing me that they were keen to serve the company better, I would be so excited. And that's kind of leadership. Where am I going? What's the distant goal in the future? And how am I going to get there? And who else can help me? That seems like a much bigger conversation than how do I write better in English, but it does allow you to have more direct conversations. It does allow you to build those trusting relationships because people see you're serious about what you're doing. So that's why it fits in. That's why all those little nuanced language components, they feed into a bigger goal of your career future. So what should Kathy do? How would she get started with that conversation? She might say, "Hi, Simon, do you have a moment?" "Hi, Kathy, sure. I was a little upset about the recent manager promotion. Could we have a quick chat about it?" "Yes, absolutely. I know the role is filled now and I accept that, but I was wondering if I could ask how I might be able to do what I might be able to do to move my career forward." "Oh, I didn't know you were interested in the position. What would you need to see in me for me to be promoted within the company? How could I work better for you and for the company?" And maybe even throw in a time frame. Like, by this time next year, I'd really love to be able to see myself in this role. What would I have to do? Of course, if you're in a small company, this might be harder, but for this scenario, it works well. "I know you work hard and get the job done, but I guess I'd never thought of you as for the management position. I guess I've got a few ideas." So rather than her taking away from that, which Kathy did, was, "Oh, he doesn't see me as management material," that was gutting to her. He may not have just considered her. That might be just it. Now he might consider her. Sometimes, that's where that explicit communication is really important in this Anglo style culture. Okay, just reading messages. What's the tone should I use for the second email to reach them? Yeah, there's no formula here. It really just does take trial and error. But I would suggest just getting into the point of, playing around with it, looking at how other people do it. Native English speakers don't know this stuff. It's just something they grow up with and they play around with it themselves through a longer period of time. And they either do it well or they don't do it well. I'm not saying most people do it well. That we've got those recognition of the qualifier modals and past continuous there as well to show how we're using the language. So don't think native speakers always do this well. But in order to move forward in your career, you have to think, I am a leader and I'm heading in that very clear direction. And everything in my communication will be pushing for that. I'll work hard, I'll work late, I'll make sure I get the job done, but I'll also be having the right conversations and I'll infuse my writing with the right tone and the right relationship building language like you see here. So what we looked at was softening your message. Maybe some situations call for that, especially if it's a very sensitive situation. Being assertive, I would say this probably is going to serve you way better than overly softening your message, like Coral said. And when to speak. Pick up the phone, send an email to set up a conversation rather than trying to deal with everything in the email. I'd say that's probably the better way to go. Now, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this program and why I think it's great. This is just a little mini program. It's a week-long program, but I thought I'd share with you some of the thoughts and insights that other people had from other programs. So the contents and tools are insightful and useful for understanding and application to business communication. So I hope you get a bit of a tone of that from tonight and the last session as well. Very helpful and insightful. I like the idea that it's more than English. So this is it, I think. We often approach language from just a textbook approach. What I need more vocabulary is what I hear people say. But I would argue the vocabulary you need are all those little words, all those adjectives, how to restructure the grammar of your sentence. You all know, I'm confident, you all know how to get your message across. But how do you now step it up to a different level of leadership, a different level of trusted communication and influence? And the thing that people found most helpful was strategies for how to manage communication in sensitive situations, receiving personal feedback on their writing and speaking, and altering the tone of their message. So hopefully tonight you can see the difference in those tones. And neither one of them is absolutely correct or absolutely incorrect. You have to sense about that, about each situation, what it requires. And the only way you can do that is to dive in head first and start playing around with it. Okay, so sorry, I'm just rereading Andy's message. If I'm chasing something urgently, but with no reply for a certain period of time, what's the tone I should use for the second email? I would just assume they'd skimmed over it. I know for myself, I flag things and I don't always get back to it. People are busy and overwhelmed. So I would write an email saying, here, I've just reattached this email. I know you're probably really busy. Respect for time. That's always the way to show respect. But say, hi, Joe. You don't show respect through the sophisticated language. You show respect through time. So, hi, Joe. I know you must be incredibly busy. You might have missed my email. I just thought I'd send you a quick reminder. Qualifiers, to see if you could get this back to me by this Friday. Give a deadline. You may not have given a deadline in the first email. I think very specific time frames for things is another way to really get to the point. Just a bit of an idea. I think you saw that at the top when Violet introduced me. And the mini writing roadmap is the course that I alluded to in the beginning. And it was also in the registration of this webinar. So basically it's 5 short videos. It's not going to take up a lot of your time. It's super short, but it really will give you the next level of how to get your writing started and some tricks for just getting down and building up some best practice for writing style. I'm going to give you some worksheets, just a really quick worksheet every day. And what I'm going to do is run another session, which will just be Q&A. So I'll just be there to answer any of your questions. You can bring your specific writing samples and maybe just show them to me, and maybe we can use one as a sample for everyone to look at. But the idea is that it will be very hands-on, very applied, and I'll give feedback wherever I can. So this is going to start next Monday. So it's just a really short little course that I thought would be helpful for the ACAA members. And so you just have to go and type in that code, and that $97 cost will come down to $35. And this is the code, which I think was on the invitation as well. Like I said, the slides are on my website, and I'll give you the link to those as well. So either take a quick snap of that now or go and download the slides after the presentation. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. If anyone does have any questions, I think by now you've really got that sense of the softening and the assertive, they're kind of 2 ends of the same spectrum, and how to start playing around with your own emails and how to insert mainly those 3 elements: the qualifier, the modal verb to soften, and and what's the third one? And the other past continuous. I was wondering, I was thinking is a nice way. I know I use that a lot. But then when I need to get more direct, which most of the time it's going to be better for you, you can move across to that head-on sentence. Can we see the short videos anytime we like? Yes, you can watch the videos anytime. You just get access. I'll drop one into your email every morning for 5 days. So Monday, the 22nd, in the morning, you'll get the video, but you can watch it anytime through the day. But basically, and you'll get a video every day, and if you even don't watch it in that day, they'll be available for the whole week and the weekend following. And then the webinar will be the following Monday. So you've got a full 7 days before we catch up. You might leave it till the weekend. I just thought it's a nice thing to be able to do if you're in transit, or if you've got a spare moment in the morning, that you can just have a quick look at the video and think about it through the day. So I urge you to do it in the timing that I send it to you, and do it at the beginning of the day. I think that's best practice as well. So you can sort of think about it while you're writing your emails throughout the day. Each video, they're on average about 5 minutes each, super short. So it's just a quick little course, not going to take up too much of your time, and mainly we'll just spend an hour the following Monday to answer any of your questions. Is there anything else? My pleasure. Like I said, there's also, these are the slides. Oh, hi, Luna. If you go to this link, you'll be able to download the slides here. So you just share your email address with me, and then you'll get the slides straight away. Hopefully, my tech guy is doing it, hopefully, while he's having his dinner, because it's up and running, my fingers crossed. If any problems, it'll be up tomorrow morning, I promise you. How to deal with miscommunications. Just checking we've got some time. We do. I think be as open as possible. The big key to good communication is openness. So you might even just say, I feel like we may not be understanding each other properly. I feel like we may be speaking at cross purposes. That might be a nice way of expressing it. And then try and be as clear as you can. Maybe you misunderstood me, but often if there is a really big miscommunication, I would, again, probably pick up the phone. Sometimes these things get out of hand when you're just trying to go email to email. So it probably, or maybe in a quick email, you say, I feel like we may not be on the same page. Do you want to have a quick chat? And just schedule a call. Okay, we've got a few more things. My pleasure, everybody. Just try the promotion code, but it doesn't seem to work. Is it ACAA? Yes, it is ACAA. I'm going to write the code here as well, because it should be, if you just go to the website as well, which is englishforbusiness.com.au/language of leaders. You'll get the, no, that's not the one. Where was it? Sorry. I will, how to apologize. Is anyone else having trouble with the promo code? ACAA should be the discount code. Oh, so you're in the promotion, you're in the course, but you just don't have the promotion code. I'll try and get this to Vivian tomorrow, maybe. Oh, the code works, Cherry. Great. I used, yeah, okay, so great. It does seem to be working. The code should be ACAA. Don't go to the link I sent you. That's the full course. The one I've set up is just a real mini course just for you guys. And it should be that previous, here, it should be this code. Now, how to apologize. I think the best way to apologize is, look, it's a really good question. I think often what we do is we self-deprecate. Do you know what I mean by self-deprecate? We put ourselves down. But I think just a clean, I'm sorry that happened, and own it. Don't ever say, I'm sorry, but I thought this. I'm sorry, but my this. I think just say, look, I'm sorry, that must have been really annoying. And maybe just that it won't happen again. I just think be it as simple as you can and as open, and take responsibility. That's the best response I can give, I think. Hope that's helpful, Sophia. If you have a problem to use the promo, let me know. Okay, yep, great. Yeah, thanks for the IT help, guys. Yeah, I tested it just before. It seems like people are getting it now. Great, thanks guys. Are there any other questions? Also, you can find me on WeChat. I'll go back to my WeChat if you want to connect with me there. I'm always happy to answer questions. And I will, if you join me on WeChat, I'll invite you to my group as well, where we do, like I said, we do deal with the odd little questions, and I share some vocabulary or sites I find useful to help in all of the things that we've been discussing tonight. But I'll hand back now. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll give you back to great. Okay, great.
Okay, thanks, Leona. And I hope everyone learned some useful tips from this webinar. So once again, that's a code for today's promotion. So if you are non-ACAA member, it will be 97 plus GST. But we have special offer to the ACAA member, 35 plus GST. And then the promotion code already sent to all the members' email. But I think some people already using the code and it works, so it's great. But if you have questions, you can feel free to ask Vivian, the operation manager, or you just scan our code. I will show you again, and then you can ask the administrator. See, that's another reason to join ACAA. So you get a great discount with our partners. Like CPA, we have discount with CPA as well, and LinkedIn Learning, and obviously the Leona's amazing course. So once again, I show you the ACAA code. So if you have any questions regarding the slides for today, or any question you want to ask Leona, or you just want to join the ACAA group, just scan this code. And I hope everybody enjoy today's topic and have a good evening. And thanks, Leona, again. And thanks, everybody. And see you next time.
See you.
And if you have more questions, you just asking in the group. We will pass your question to Liana again as well. And also you can join Liana's mini course and she will happy to answer questions. Thank you guys. Have a good evening. Have a good evening, Liana. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye, Violet.
Bye.